Hey everyone, this is Bryant with Pneumatic Dyno, here to continue on part 2 for this Aces Joker EFI system. Got it installed on the car, got it put in the car, drove it for a couple weeks, put it on the dyno, and here's how all that went. So about an engine, we'll just call it a junkyard engine. I thought it was in better condition than it was.
This bullshit.
Long story short, took it apart and was not really happy with what I saw on it. A couple of the cylinders were pretty much full of rust. But I didn't have time or the resources to go through and get it all rebuilt, and we all know what rabbit hole that goes to. It's like, oh, well, I need to do this, might as well put a stroker kit and, spend 10 grand on it. So, I thought it was actually a pretty good experiment this way. So the build was a short block junkyard 440. I had to clean up the cylinder walls the best I could using Scotch-Brite, a lot of WD-40 and transmission fluid, and rotating the engine over a whole bunch, and dingle honed every cylinder. I didn't take the pistons out because there's such a bad ring ridge that I didn't want to break a piston or deal with any of that. It was just a very quick and sloppy build. I did inspect the bearings and everything. They all actually looked pretty good, at least visually. Slapped back together. I did change the camshaft out to a Comp Cams XE284. I figured with a big single plane and aftermarket heads that the small stock cam just wasn't really going to cut it. So here are those cam specs as well. You can look it up online too. It's just a flat tap at XE284. And then the heads are a 440 source stealth head. They're as cast. The intake manifold is the Aces single plane 440 intake with Mulitport. It's just as cast. I didn't do anything with it. It looks very, very similar to another popular brand. If you just Google 440 Mulitport intakes, you'll find one that looks a lot like it. Then the headers I had to use because of the spark plug location. My old 18-year-old Headmans fit way better than the headers I just bought for my 3D3 last year. So I threw those old things back on. They worked well enough for what we were doing. But this was, in my mind, a perfect budget, throw something together over the weekend build. Got a block sitting in the corner. Bought some speed parts, just see what happens over a weekend. So that's what I did. And it, honestly, I didn't even know if it was going to run. And it did pretty good. Had some woes with getting the camshaft, or first fire up and camshaft break in. My map sensor didn't work right away, so had to really get creative with the fuel table. And just little things like that. My electric water pump locked up about 10 minutes into it, so changed the water pump and finished the break-in, and just a whole bunch of stuff that was a nuisance that went wrong right out of the gate. But camshaft made it. It survived. So I want to touch on this part too. This intake is about 6 inches even from the base to the top of the flange. So that does make it a little tougher to fit under a hood. Took a little bit of a side profile. You can judge for yourself how much hood clearance you may or may not need. I know mine will not. So as you can see on that dyno pull, it had a ton of blow by on the high end, a ton of smoke out of the exhaust. Didn't really do it until you floor it and let it really wind up and get a load on it. And then when you let off, there's just tons of blow by too. Yeah, it does it every time. Every pull, I checked the oil and added oil and made sure everything was okay before I did anything. And then the dyno graph actually looked really good each time. Made good power. It was kind of rolled over at 5,000, and this thing should have pulled or peaked more at 6. I think it's just the absolute lack of cylinder pressure that this engine could do. But 325 horse, 390 foot-pounds through 2¼ inch exhaust. I went to, after the weekend, it was still strapped to the dyno, went to I yanked off the exhaust, headed an open loop on the same tune that made this power, and did a pull after it warmed up, and it was down like 80 horsepower. So shut it off, checked over everything. It was running all 8 just fine. No burnt wires or anything stupid like that. So fired it back up and listened to it, and couldn't really hear any bottom end noise, but you could hear the or no knocking, I should say. You couldn't hear any knocking, but then I could hear a bearing squeal. So shut her down, and later that week limped it over to the other bay, took it apart. There's a little bit of glitter on the dipstick, and yeah, one of the rod bearings let go. By the time I got it moved over, you could start to hear a little bit of knocking, but it wasn't just about ready to throw a rod or anything. Caught it pretty early. So the 383 is going back in it. I had to swap the heads back over and some other stuff, throw the dual plane on it, and I'm going to install the Fusion on it first, get some testing data with the Fusion, and then I'm going to get an Edelbrock Victor intake manifold modified for Mulitport, and I'm going to test the Fusion on it, and then I'm going to install the Joker back on it after it's converted to Mulitport, so that can get a good comparison of the Mulitport versus throttle body all around, whether drivability, power, startup, everything. Just do a nice good comparison of the two. So that will likely be part 3. We got the Goldschlager edition in this 440. Look at that. It's been drinking something. Even embedded in the camshaft. It's putting on its own bearing material. That's neat.